I think get to know who you are and what suits you. It's very easy to compare yourself to other people in this industry.
Hi, and welcome back to the Drama Coach podcast. This series, we're focusing a little more on teens and young adults. Those of you starting to take acting more seriously and thinking about what your next steps might be. Today, I'm joined by Laura Graham-May, founder of Rag and Bone Arts in Chippenham. Laura has a wealth of experience working with young people through drama, particularly in devising and ensemble-based work, where the focus is as much on creativity, collaboration and expression as it is on performance. Alongside that, she's also taught at Bath Theatre Academy, supporting students as they move into more focused post-16 training. In this episode, we're talking about what good drama training really looks like at different stages and what actually matters as you start figuring out your own path in acting. So let's get into it. Welcome, Laura.
Hello. Morning.
Hello. Good morning. It's really lovely to have you on. For those who don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Rag and Bone Arts?
Sure. Well, I started Rag and Bone 15 years ago now, really as a youth theatre on Saturday mornings, and we worked with primary ages. My own children were primary then, and I saw a little bit of a gap in the market. I come from Salisbury, where I joined the youth theatre, and it's a very cultural town. And I wanted the same for my kids and the people that I was meeting. So that was the inspiration. It started as a small youth theatre on a Saturday morning. That was it. And now 15 years later, we've expanded and evolved and changed, and we're all sorts of things. So now it's art and design. We introduce things throughout the years, art and design, youth theatre, and now youth groups and clubs and all sorts of workshops as well. So we're quite vast.
Yes, so much going on.
Yeah. It's very busy at the moment. I've always worked another job alongside, but I left that job about a year and a half ago now to move it on properly. I think it's a very difficult thing to have your fingers in too many pies, and to be too many things to too many people means you can't really focus. So I'm enjoying it, but it is a challenge, and it is a lot of work.
I can imagine it is a lot of work. What's most important to you when you're working with young people?
I think really it's to make them feel comfortable. And I think you would probably think that in every training situation or environment where you're working with people, you don't get the best out of people unless they feel relaxed, unless they feel comfortable. And that's in itself is quite a difficult thing to do. And I think you probably change your approach in your teaching career as you go through. So I think I was probably a lot harder when I was in my 20s when I was teaching. Even my early 30s. And I think it evolves and it changes depending on the environment you're in as well. So if you're in a formal education setting, it can be slightly different. In the environment like we have for the youth theatre, I think it's really important that we start from that basis and then we think about how to develop their confidence. So, yeah, that would be one of the most important things I would say.
And Rag and Bone feels to me a little bit different to some traditional drama classes. Can you talk a bit, you mentioned your approach. Can you talk a bit more about your approach?
Yeah. I think there are many different philosophies about drama training, and everybody approaches it differently. And mostly you approach it based on your own training. And that's either because it was great or as a reaction against it. And certainly my youth theatre was great and inclusive and great fun, but I was in many different environments and some of them were just terrifying and scary, and the atmosphere felt wrong for me and it didn't bring out the best in me. It was a challenge for me with my fluctuating confidence to do well. So I think some people think the discipline is the most important thing, and the old school teachers in particular, if they went to some of those harder drama schools, maybe approach their own teaching in that way. And then that meant that we were taught by people like that. I never felt that that worked for me. Certainly, I've worked with other people in the past who have felt that the discipline is the most important thing. But I think there are different ideas of what that means. And for me, that can be relaxed. It's a challenge to get young people to understand discipline in a relaxed environment. But I think that is the challenge that I take on.
Yes, and I see you do it very well. That's I think something that drew me to Rag and Bone, because the listeners might know already that I do some teaching for you, both adults and children, and that drew me. And I certainly had some experiences that I didn't enjoy and some that I did in my own training, and definitely feel that I love to bring perhaps the way that I would have liked to be treated all the time to those students and those adults. So yes, I can absolutely testament to that. You mentioned in our planning for this, and I really liked what you said here because I think it's really true. You mentioned saying a lot of people, and I think often parents, maybe students as well, think that performing arts is mostly or just musicals. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, and it's everywhere actually. As soon as you talk about performing arts, there's all this sing, dance, act, shine, star, razzmatazz, which for some people is fine, but the performing arts is any artistic venture that you are performing in. And certainly when I was younger, I was looking for training. I started as dance training, wanted to go back to acting, and mostly the opportunities were stage schools and musical theatre. Actually, in retrospect now, I wished I could have discovered physical theatre, community arts, devising, creating work, working for TV, working in all of those other things, opportunities that there are. So obviously music is performing arts, but I think as soon as you say performing arts, people think of the West End and stage and musicals. So I think if you're interested in being a performer, or you're a parent whose child is interested in performing, it's really good that you understand the difference in that and that you explore all of those opportunities. Because it might be that your child isn't right for musical theatre. A lot of the people we work with, a lot of the boys don't want to sing or dance. That's why they're drawn to what we do. But it might not mean that they haven't got a voice and they can't move. And it might not mean that they need to write off performing as well.
I love that. That's brilliant, and leads really nicely into my next set of questions, which is, in drama, performing arts, we often talk about the outcomes, the shows, the roles, the being good or great performance. But what is really happening in the process? Because I'm a big believer in the process, and I'm pretty sure you are too. What is happening in that process?
I think if they're included in the process, that's brilliant. And if they evolve throughout that process, the product will always be good. So I think you can tell when you watch a performance, if the process hasn't been good, the outcome is almost always not as good as it could have been. So the process is everything, I think. And equally, as I grew up, I realized that I enjoyed the process more than the product. So it's the environment of being involved in creating work and the interaction and the creative process that really excites me. So yeah, I think that's
Yes.
the question.
Then that's great. So what are the young people gaining from these sessions that maybe isn't always obvious to their parents or maybe even to themselves?
Well, I think in a lot of stage schools or maybe drama training, they're not always involved in the process. And I think if you can get them hooked in and understanding why we make theatre and that they can be involved in that process of creating the work, that's really exciting for me. And I don't think it happens enough. I'm not sure it happens in school. Maybe if they have a devising module, it might, but not in every environment. They're not asked their opinion that much. And what interests me is what their perspective on life is and whether they can think about making theatre that expresses that. And it's difficult because sometimes we're working with the youth theatre at the moment. Sometimes they're not really sure what we're asking them or why it's relevant. And they think we're just having a chat at the beginning. But to get their ideas about their reflections on the world, because what came first, in which order do you do everything? But they're not necessarily thinking that their perception of the world is interesting enough to be making plays out of. So for them, there are plays and then there's them. So they don't really understand yet how that can combine. So you have to really draw it out of them. And that is a challenge.
can imagine. And I love that, because art is life, isn't it? And life is art. And all this write what you know that you hear a lot. So yes, how wonderful that the students are taking their version of the world, their experiences, and bringing them into a piece of theatre. And you're right. I think unless you're doing the, say, GCSE drama module on devising, there isn't a lot. There always was in my drama teaching when I used to teach in schools. I used to really like devising. But yes, the topic is usually prescribed, isn't it, by the school or the curriculum or the teacher. How wonderful to be taking it from them. And it's interesting that that isn't easy, and necessarily, like you said, they don't even really realize that they are creating from themselves to start with. So I think that's really beautiful. Thank you for doing that. Let's talk about confidence then, because I suppose this links in quite nicely, because if they're finding their stories and their way in the world, that should link quite nicely to confidence. And how does drama support things like confidence and communication in an everyday sense? So it's great for their drama training, but how does it impact them in life?
Well, improvisation is the perfect example, whether you're a child or an adult, of how you can learn to be spontaneous and to let go of too many concerns about what you're going to say. So I used to joke, John Money taught the improvisation to begin with for us. And he used to say,
I must get him on the podcast.
Yeah.
He'd be a great one to have.
He used to say, don't filter. And I used to say to him, oh my goodness, I spent my life trying to filter, otherwise to stop myself getting sacked or smacked in the face.
Yeah.
But actually, it's a really good technique to learn if you start practicing that, and then just running with ideas and saying the first thing that comes into your head. All of that is really good practice, and something that we don't do as adults very much. Unless you go to improv, you won't practice that. But equally, that confidence thing, I think confidence is a fluctuating state. So people talk about, are you a confident person or not? And for me, that's too big a question. It depends on the day. It depends on the environment. It depends on what I'm being asked to do. It depends on how I'm feeling. It depends on what's happened before. So, but you hope that what you will do is instill in these kids an idea that their opinion matters, and that what they might think isn't very much success at something is huge, and that you notice it and appreciate it. So they might say, oh, all I did was, she asked me a question and all I said was, I thought it would be better if we did it like that. But to notice that and say, that's a really brilliant idea. Thanks for your contribution. I've seen you do this, Lisa. It was one of the reasons we work with you. Is instinctively notice that small thing they do and not write it off or go to the next person who's talking louder or has got a better idea, they think is a better idea, is not to just move on, but to notice what that person said and to acknowledge it. And I think you see that happen with some of the less confident kids, is they go out of the room bouncing because you noticed them, and you noticed that tiny thing they didn't think was very significant, and somebody else might have just ignored it and moved on to somebody else. But you can see it changing. There's one person I can think of at the moment in particular who wouldn't consider themselves a natural actor, only because they're not the most confident person that walks in the room with the biggest voice. But I've seen a change already in 3 weeks of the youth theatre just by using that approach.
I love that. And I think that's so important what you've said about it being fluctuating. That really resonates with me. And it depends who you ask. There's a bunch of people who think I'm the most confident person in the world. And there is a bunch of people that really know that I'm not. You're so right. It depends on the day, the mood, the environment. You said that is so important, that it's an environment where you can be free and perhaps a little unfiltered, like you said. And yes, I noticed that in the children that we work with. And I think it's a huge myth as well that the loudest child in the room is the most confident, or is that one that's going to be an actor. I certainly wasn't the loudest child in the room. No. I might be the loudest adult now, but hey, that's all that training on our lungs and our diaphragm. But I think that's so important. And There are lots of people that listen to this podcast because they love acting now, and they may dip in and out of it. You know, some of them start really young, dip out and come back in, and then maybe want to take it seriously now. And I think it's really important that we don't think out of that confidence as linear. It's not just going to go up and up. There are always going to be factors. And I think that's important for parents to know as well, because we can all worry, can't we, about our children. But there's ebbs and flows to confidence, and I don't think people really talk about that. They might be selling their Lambda classes or whatever and saying, you know, your child will become more confident, and they will. Absolutely, all of that stuff does help, but it is not just a line of confidence going upwards. And I think I needed to know that when I was younger. My parents needed to know that, and then not freak out when we do have those dips, because that's so normal even now. And I'll make sure I bring this up with the students this week, that we all do rise and dip in that confidence. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's going to sit with me and I'm going to remember that. Thank you. So what do parents get wrong then from your experience? What can be misunderstood perhaps about drama and training and the industry from parents' point of view?
Probably links back to what you're just saying, actually, that I will take my nervous child who I want to be more vocal and more confident, and you will solve them. There's a little bit of that goes on. No, we might aid a process, and we might give them more confidence in their voice, their opinions. Also, because we write our own plays, we might give them, if they don't want to play the lead, we might give them the role of the tomato, say. But the tomato might
have you actually had a tomato?
But I'd quite like to. I just saw them in my kitchen. And I have done some strange things. But we might, but if they like singing, the tomato might get a solo.
Love it. I love this.
In some ways, because we can work with the abilities of the kids that come to us, it means that we can adapt everything to make it work for them, so that, you know, everyone jokes about being the last tree from the left or whatever, the soldier. But we can start them there, because they might not want to have a big lot of responsibility, but we can move them on. And if they can tap dance, we could give the tomato a tap dance. You know, it's whatever we want to do to bring out the best in everybody. And I can't remember your original question, sorry.
We were talking about parents and what sort of their misunderstanding might be. And I think you've said it perfectly there, especially with confidence, is that my child's going to go to this drama class and get more confident. But I also think they might think my child's going to go to this drama class and achieve X, Y, and Z, you know.
I would like them to be the lead.
yes, to be the lead. Yeah, but are they going to? And again, I think a lot of parents see that and think, oh, they've got this role at age 4 and this at this and that. But again, the acting industry is not like that. And with the best will in the world as a teacher, and we'd always love to give them a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, that doesn't necessarily work, especially with plays and musicals.
No.
I think you're onto something there with devising work and bringing a bit of everyone into that devising work. I think it's really magical. And I used to get really annoyed with students when they said, oh, miss, we can't do this because so-and-so's missing. It's devising work. Forget them for a minute and think about what you can do. Let's take the characters that you have got. Like, I think with devising, you are a little freer to have the can-do attitude, because you're not stuck to a script or stuck to how something has to be. So I think that I've gone on a slight tangent there, but I think it's forgotten in many other singing, dancing, acting classes. You're right. People go and put on musicals, which is wonderful, which I absolutely love a musical. But I feel like this has got another layer to it that really lets those young people have ownership and therefore develop their craft and their confidence in a different way.
Well, we realized early on that we had a lot of kids. We had some that really like learning by rote and really struggle with bouncing off ideas or taking turns, but they would learn scripts. So you give them a scene, they come back the next week and they've learned it. And then you have other kids who maybe they're dyslexic, maybe they just don't like the printed page, who have got loads of ideas and really like to devise. So very early on, that's how we started working, because we realized we had to adapt. Otherwise, the people in the room weren't happy and we didn't have what we wanted. But yeah, we do that as much as possible. There is a challenge with that, obviously, because that's a lot of work. But also,
Mm.
there is a challenge with the young people because there's a point at which you're creating the material, but there's a point at which that process has to end, and then the collaboration starts if you're going to head towards a final product. So when you get into a habit where you value their opinion and you take their opinion, if you're not careful, you're 5 weeks from a performance and they want to change things, or they've changed their mind
Ouch.
who they want to play, and then it becomes impossible. So I think
Mm.
you adapt as much as possible, but then you get to a point where you have to say, no, we have to now go with these ideas. We can't change it, or there's no way it'll work.
And I feel like you've hinted at my next question as well, which is how do you make sure that you support the quieter children and the ones that naturally love the spotlight? But I feel like I've got a vision of this already. But yeah, sketch that out for me, how you make sure that they both flourish.
If they're with us for a very long time, it's probably a case that the first term, the quieter ones want to stay quiet. So I think it's important not to just say, in the room we've all got to. I remember one girl in particular years ago at the cause, and she's a naturally mild-mannered, quiet girl. And we wrote her a role to suit her character, but I gave her one line, which was from the balcony of the Cause Arts Centre, to shout "stop," to stop the action. And I don't know at the time whether, again, the parents' expectation was that she'd have a bigger role or something, but I felt it suited her and it was right for her. And this one challenge was challenge enough for someone like her. And it was hard for somebody also who wasn't used to using their voice in that way, in that powerful a way. And it was integral to the story. If she wasn't able to do it really loudly at that point, it was very difficult to see how we were going to move the action on. But she did it. And for me, that was the challenge. And it was one word, but it had to be done quite loudly. And of course, we've got contingency in case she had a crisis of confidence. But she did it. And so for me, that meant she did it. The other thing is sometimes, I don't want to use the term dampening down, but it's sometimes trying to get the ones that want to be heard and are used to taking the floor just to step back and listen. Have you played that game? You probably have, group counting 1 to 20.
Yes, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. But sometimes,
Gosh, we manage 1 to 10, Laura. That's amazing. If you manage 20, well done.
Back in the day, pre-COVID, this was. There are some people that won't sit back, and some people that, and it's very telling, that exercise. And it can tell you how your rehearsal's going to go. Because
Yes.
we got too much fizzy energy. We've got 3 or 4 people that have to say every other number, sorry. And then some that can't get in there. And you think, that means unless we do a different exercise now before we start, the rehearsal won't go well. But that's a challenge as well, because like you say, the loudest aren't necessarily the more confident. And so how do you try to find a way to get them to sit back, but not crush their confidence, and tell them that isn't an appropriate kind of behavior in a rehearsal space? So, yeah, I would say a consistent reinforcing of rehearsal etiquette and collaborative thinking, and trying to get them to learn that to sometimes sit back if their instinct is to jump in. But that is on work in progress.
Yes, no, always, absolutely. Aren't we all a work in progress all the time? So that leads me to my sort of bigger question, and you can make this as big or as small as you like, but is drama for everyone?
Learning drama can be for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, although I live with an introvert, an artist, and I would suggest that drama's for everyone that wants to have a go.
Yes.
Drama isn't for everyone. Drama's the worst thing in the world for some people.
Yeah.
Fear God in them, and they want to work alone. Drama doesn't need to be for everyone. I think drama games could be for everyone.
Yeah.
I think things, remembering to play in a safe environment where you're not exposed and you're not asked to act, can be for everyone. If that's what you like to do, we're very conscious because we work with actors and artists that we've got one room, they work at the same time. So we've got the teen artists in the room next door to the teen actors. I sit in the middle and I can see and hear both. And I can tell you they're totally different. There
Yes.
can be only 8 people in that hall, and it sounds like they're 80 sometimes, and that's a good thing, by
Yes.
the way.
I love it.
And there can be 10 people in the art room, and you can't really hear them. But that's okay, and I think understanding that is important, and that's why we do what we do, and we have those options, 'cause you can have 2 people from the same family. One can go right into art and one can go left into acting. And to find their place in their room where they're comfortable is the important thing. So for some people, drama is
Definitely.
a phase. Some people, drama is an experience and it's something they love to do. But I suppose the short answer is no, drama isn't for everyone, but it is for everyone that wants to have a go.
Oh, it's a beautiful answer. I like that. I second that. So let's think of hobby versus career then. Do you think, and I know the answer already from hearing your last question, but we're going to go for it anyway. Do you think drama always has to lead somewhere professionally?
No, absolutely not. And I think really you don't get told this enough in school still. And in all sorts of drama and theatre training, to just kind of you need to go through the process to work out whether it's for you. So there's no point in, you can't avoid the process, and if you love it, do it. But during that process, work out who you are and what it is you think you need from life. And that's what I've done. Lots of careers talks in the last couple of years at the various schools, and I always find it difficult because they say, what's your advice? My biggest piece of advice is get to know yourself. Because my advice is based on me and who I am and what's happened to me and how I feel. So the only bit of advice I can give you is based on what I've discovered. And everybody's unique and you will be different. So I think work out who you are and what's important to you. It took me a long time to realize I've got a very strong need for home and security. Jobbing actors, going around the country and living it precariously is great fun in your early 20s, but I knew that at some point in my life I would need security. And I also have had a lot of nerves as a young actor. One of the reasons I did improv was because I was challenging myself all the time to overcome it. And I felt great every time I did. I think get to know who you are and what suits you. Because it's very easy to compare yourself to other people in this industry.
Especially nowadays. Yeah.
That you're onto a losing streak, really. And it's very difficult not to do, and we all do it. So, but I think know yourself and don't apologize for being different to somebody else. So if somebody tells you that this is how you should be and this is how you should feel, and you really, really don't feel it, then acknowledge that and kind of accept it and work out how to work with it. And
I think it's know yourself and trust yourself, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
absolutely.
And that's hard as, like I said, series 2, we're going into trying to help the teens and the early 20s. It is really hard. It's easier for us as adults now to say we know ourselves and we can trust our guts. It was hard. It was hard for me to know myself, definitely, in my early 20s. And there's some things I would change if I went back.
This episode is supported by Scene Tribe, a new industry network for creatives built around your credits, your collaborations, and the work that you've actually done. If you're ready to be found by the right people, head to scenetribe.com. Right, back to the episode.
You've talked about ebbs and flows in terms of confidence, and that can happen in terms of you and your values and needs. Like you said, you changed in terms of your needs and that need for home and security. And it's okay for these young people, I think, as long as they have their confidence and their knowledge in the best that they can and give themselves grace if things change and develop, because they will. Your brains are still developing even in early 20s. So
absolutely,
I feel like sometimes it's easy for us to give advice or not. It can be hard when someone says, give your best advice. Like you said, we can only give it based on our experiences and the things that we thought were helpful or not helpful and react against that. So I think that's the most beautiful bit of advice you've given so far, is that knowing themselves to the best of their ability, and beginning to trust that.
Mm.
And does the advice differ that you give depending on the different stages of the journey or levels of interest in this young performer?
Yeah, I think sometimes people around you, I mean, one of the reasons I'm hesitant to give advice is because I didn't take it either.
Yeah.
And,
Sure.
I felt that people didn't know me really. So I think somebody said, go and do choreography at Laban. So I got into Laban in London Studio Centre, and the advice was go and do a degree in dance. And I just thought, oh, I mean, I didn't take it because this person didn't know I could act. That's one of the reasons I didn't take it. Because I felt it was their need to have dancers at top dance schools that was driving that decision, rather than their need for me. So that's one of the reasons I didn't take it. And I think in a way you can't miss out the experience of working out who you are. So whatever decision you make, and my daughter's deciding about universities at the moment, and I can see herself getting herself into a tangle. Whatever decision you make, it's not the end of the world if it isn't the most perfect decision. Because I remember we went round the roundabout in COVID. I always thought it was quite a good metaphor. Me and her were going for a drive in COVID, and I missed the turning. And I went, oh, well, let's go around again. And then I was joking, it's the most fun we'd had in ages because you couldn't do anything in COVID. And then I said, well, actually, Mars, this is quite a good metaphor for life. If you go round the roundabout and you miss the turning, just go round again.
And enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not the end of the world. If you make a decision and then you go, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Well, if you worry too much about the decisions being perfect, you would never make a decision. And if you think that you've got it wrong, it doesn't matter. You've learned something from the experience. So I'm going on so much, Lisa, that I can't remember the original question.
No, I feel like you've answered it about giving different advice to different stages and levels of interest. And I think what you're saying is you kind of tailor it because they're going to know themselves on a different level, and they're going to, I think your advice is that go again and take those risks. And I don't mean risky risks. I mean those risks to speak up and try things in those rooms and embrace all of that training that you're doing, I think.
Improv's good for that. Make a decision, commit, go. So, I say that I'm terribly indecisive, but I've tried to learn through improv, make a decision, commit, go. And then so you can hum ha, eventually commit, make that decision and stick with it. So yeah, my advice is tailored to what I can see in people and what I think might be the best route for them, and they might not have explored, because being a performer won't be right for everybody. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't be involved in the industry in a very fulfilling way.
Yes. Oh, well, there's so many more, and we haven't really delved into them yet in this podcast, but there are so many more elements and facets to performing arts than just being an actor, singer, dancer, performer. Yeah, that's, I need to hook up some other people and get lots more, because people might start off as an actor because they love the theatre or they love drama, and actually find that their route is somewhere else within theatre and performance that they actually embrace and do as their career. There are so many, go and Google them, people. There are so many other elements of the performing arts that you can work professionally in, or maybe even alongside acting. That's a whole nother one to explore. So let's talk post 16 and training pathways, as that's where I'm hoping to go with this series. So we mentioned that you also taught at Bath Theatre Academy. What changes when young people move into that post 16 stage? What is the difference in them, in their training, in their environment?
Well, I loved teaching in further education because it does believe in second chances, and you get a huge variety of people at 16. But the one thing they've probably got in common is they didn't really find their feet in school, in the curriculum. Some did, but they wouldn't have come to us if the traditional route of exams, formal exams, were right for them. So you get a lot of dyslexic kids, which is brilliant because they're wildly creative. parents used to say they're dyslexic. Is that a problem? And I say, no, quite the opposite. It's a boon.
Superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they also, some of them come defensive from school if it hasn't been a good experience. So you need to, we used to say in the induction, there are main differences. What's the difference between school and here? And some of them put their hands up and say, oh, there aren't any bells. Yeah, absolutely. You need to look at your clock, your watch at the time, pre-mobiles. You need to get yourself out. When it finishes, we'll tell you when you can leave the room. You look at your timetable, so you're self-sufficient. And they call you by your first name. But to begin with, so the whole of the first year is to do with getting them to understand that relationship with you. I'm not Mrs. Graham May, or Miss Graham as I was then. I'm Laura, but that doesn't mean I'm your mate. So that's a very difficult distinction because it's still a formal learning environment and I'm still here for your learning and your welfare. And I will have a laugh with you and you will be able to get me off topic and I'll talk for hours. So we don't do any work, but I'm not your mate. So, and that's a tricky balance.
Yes.
They get it by the second year, but it takes the whole of the first year to do that. And I met some really, really lovely young people at Bath College. I think whatever route they went into, those are really formative years, 16 to 18. I talked to lots of people that say they did a foundation in art or dance or whatever then, and it was the best course ever. One of the reasons being, I think you've shed school. The other reason being you meet other like-minded people and finally you're in your tribe. And the other reason is is the transition into adulthood. You are, and you're given the safety. And normally there's only about 15 or 20 people, maybe a bit more on your course. So there's a lot to be said for that. That's one of the reasons people love it is it's got all that nurture. You're with other people that understand you, but also the classes aren't that huge. I think when you go on to wherever you go on to afterwards, that's when the shock happens.
Yes. And how do you know, or how might parents know, that this young person is ready to take things more seriously? I'm ready for that next step.
Well, we saw hundreds of people move through that stage in their lives. And I think throughout the course of the 2 years, by the end of it, you could really tell who loved it enough to carry on and who really loved it, but had different ideas about where their life was going. And really a lot of it some of it was to do with talent, but it was more to do with commitment. So if they'd made that commitment and they were always at rehearsals, regardless of their role, and that you just felt it from them, you would feel that they were ready. It would really had to be that. It was nothing else. And there were other people that throughout the course of the second year would find where they were within the group. And then they'd start talking about other things they wanted to do, events management, whatever it was. Nothing wrong with that at all. But they'd been exposed to it and they'd made those decisions. So they tell you, I think, and then you just reinforce what they're telling you. I think they know.
And I think nothing's lost there because all of those skills, like you say, if it's off into events management or if it's off to be stage manager, not an actor or whatever, all of those skills have culminated and contributed to them being that whole person that they know by that stage.
Run a supermarket. We had somebody that went on to manage a supermarket. Brilliant. Good for them. They learned so much about collaboration and management and people and environments and all those sorts of things on their course. And then they found something that suited them. Great.
So other than that drive and that commitment, which you're saying is the overriding thing that you saw in these young people, is there anything else? You mentioned talent briefly. Is there anything else that you tend to see in those ones that do or did go on to train and work professionally?
Sometimes there was an instinct in them that you felt was it's not they didn't have to try. It's not that. It was just there.
It was in them.
More than some other people. So, I mean, people could always surprise you. So it's you can't ever go, well, that one's got it and that one hasn't. It's not that simple. But sometimes Do you know what? It's more commitment than anything else. I think if they
Great.
just always have to be in the room because that's where they want to be, and that's where they want to be more than they want to be anywhere else. And I
I think
was
that's
you always used to
refreshing
say
to hear.
we always used to say first in, last out, and that's how I was in my youth theatre, and I was always first at the door, and they couldn't get rid of me. But that's where I wanted to be, and so I think it's you're looking for other people that it feels like that's where they want to be. So they're not
Mm.
looking at their clock and thinking, "Oh," and then going, "Oh, well, there's a festival on. Can I don't want to do that production," and making excuses. Like it shouldn't be a fight. If you want to be here, um, I shouldn't have to persuade you to be here.
That
Because
gives me great hope for all the students that I'm seeing, for myself now, in an acting career. That gives me great hope because those are the ones that excite me. And that was me and is me as well. And I think that's the one thing that, well, maybe you can't control, maybe it just is in you. But as a parent as well, to see your child wanting to be there and never leave, and that passion and that commitment, that's great. And then you don't need to, I don't know. I just think all of the other elements might be a bit out of your control. Yes, you can train to get better, etc. But I think, like you say, if it's in you, that passion and that commitment, then it's kind of where you need to be. And I think you lent towards saying, you're not saying they found it easy, but I think when you're passionate about something and when you're committed, it feels easier to you, doesn't it? Because you're
yes.
not being dragged somewhere else. I know that with doing this podcast, I'm so excited to do it and I love it. I'll stay up late editing, etc., because I'm drawn to it. It's where I want to be right now, and I'm learning from it, and it's exciting. And then it doesn't feel like work. So if that's in your child, then, or if that's in you as a young person, then you're in the right place. I think that's really exciting, and I can't think of the word, but like solidifying
Mhm.
of
Mm.
that passion.
And as a parent,
So thrilled you said that.
when they lose that was when you need to have a conversation about, do you still want to do it?
Mm,
Because that
yes.
that can happen too. I remember loving, I think, ballet for a bit when I was tiny, but I then was dragging myself to it, and I think eventually my mum said, "Are you still enjoying it?" And I thought, "Well, I haven't enjoyed it for
Mm,
ages."
yeah. And you don't realize.
But it's kind of I hadn't even really considered stopping just because it's something I did. So I think have those conversations, and parents know their kids, and we know them. If they're not running in and they don't want to stay, then let them go. I mean, I think some parents worry if they want to stop, and oh, how do I tell? Because they know we really care. How do I tell them they don't want to care? Well, just it doesn't matter, and the chances are we know anyway.
That's so true.
We
Yeah,
already
I
felt
love
it.
that. And I feel you've answered the next few things I wanted to cover in all of that, really, which is beautiful. So let's just look at I was going to talk a bit about beyond performing and those careers. We dropped it in. Are there some that spring to mind straight away that you'd like to point people in the direction of? What are these other roles within theatre, within the arts? Obviously, you and I can talk in terms of being a leader in those creative spaces, but what are the other things that perhaps young people might not be aware of that you'd like to mention?
I'd say writing, directing,
Hmm.
producing, all of those arts management, community artist, arts engagement, anything, a festival organizer. I mean, when you Google it, there are hundreds. And we did
Yes.
it as for a project recently. And there's also TV and film, and there are all those
Hmm.
jobs within film and television that we still don't know about. We Google them when we work with young people and we go, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. Colorist. I mean,
Yeah.
actually, this generation, they do know more because they're on Instagram.
Mm. Yeah.
But just keep your mind open and keep asking what these jobs are and finding out, and work experience, go and do something, just discover, because you won't know and we won't know and people won't necessarily tell you, and most careers advisors will probably not encourage you to get involved at all, so do it off your own back.
Mm.
Find these people or find some sort of work experience and go and find out whether there's something that you fit perfectly with.
That's beautiful advice. Beautiful. Is there anything, before I go into my little quick fire and shake things off, is there anything you wish that we covered in our chat that we've just had that hasn't come up?
I suppose we haven't really kind of covered mental health. And
no, we haven't. I have covered it in quite a lot of other episodes, but I'd love to hear your take on it as well, please.
I think it's a big concern of most parents, but equally it would be a big concern of mine for people going off to train, because it's just a warning about that. A competitive environment where you are the product is a very difficult environment to be in. So just an air of caution about, I hope the schools these days, the stage schools, are better at nurturing their young people.
There's still a few horror stories creeping in, but it does sound a lot better than 20 years or so ago. But
they say they have pastoral support. I would check in with your child if they are going off to train. Make sure that you have an open conversation with them, because training in something where you are the product is tricky. And if you're not careful in that world of comparison, you've already got it through social media. So I think this generation have already got enough challenges. I think don't be afraid to be unique. Don't be afraid to stand your ground and say, this is who I am. And I would just caution trying to fit into anybody's idea about what a performer should be and how they should look and how they should act and how they should feel. And make sure that and that's a tricky one, because you don't want to end up with lots of people being obstinate. I'm like this, and that's too bad. I've been told, I must know myself. Because you'll be asked to learn things about yourself and delve deep, but just keep an eye on, keep perspective when you can, and remember who your friends are and keep them close.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's beautiful advice, Laura. Thank you for bringing that up. Are you up for a little quick fire round to finish things off?
Why not?
Awesome. Okay, so the first thing that pops into your head, and it's okay if we've already covered it or if it's something completely new that comes into your mind. So one thing that every parent should know about drama training.
Have I got to answer quickly?
Dearly, but not all guests manage it. Don't worry.
Just me saying I've got really good at spontaneity and I can't think of it.
I know it's pressure.
It can be really good fun.
There we go. Perfect. You can elaborate if you like. That's really nice.
And it can be very difficult. It's a roller coaster.
Very, very true. Yes, I love that. It's a roller coaster. Be prepared, parents. Okay, one myth about acting classes.
That you have to be a tree.
Yes. Although we've all been one, right? At one stage or another. I'm sure I was a tree. Being in the spotlight or being a member of the ensemble?
What's the question? Which is best?
Or which would you pick? Spotlight or ensemble?
I would always choose ensemble, but then that's me. So you decide.
Yes. And process or performance?
Process again, but that's me.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that.
And never say never.
No,
so now,
exactly.
I still wouldn't ever write off going back to performing. Not right now, and not for now, but never say never.
And that's what I'm loving about having so many different opinions, but also people that come on with wise words and say, this is what works for me, but go and find what works for you. Take it, be fueled by it, but know yourself, because there are so many young people trying to be copies of something else. Know yourself, take all of this advice and take what works for you. That's kind of the ethos of the podcast, I would say. So a closing question then. If a parent is listening, because it's mostly been parents so far, and like I said, we're trying to branch out to help the young performers themselves as well. If parents are listening and wondering if drama is worth it, in quotation marks, for their child, what would you say to them?
Are we talking about drama training, formal drama training to become an actor?
Oh, let's go down that route. Yes.
Okay.
Either, but yeah, let's go with that.
Like I touched on it earlier, it's always worth it. It's a great experience. And the point about your higher education experience is that you have a lovely time. you do something you love, and you evolve as a person. And if you can do that and come out with a degree, brilliant. Then, I mean, everybody, there's a lot of talk about degrees being expensive now, isn't there? So
Yeah.
you're going to come out with some debt, because that's the nature of it if you're going to go on. But you will have probably an amazing experience. And you will find friends for life. You'll discover things about yourself you'd never discover if you didn't go. You will create some really fascinating and interesting work. You might get a chance to work with some really amazing people. You'll make some great friends. You might find some bits of it tough, but ultimately that's what life's about. So, rather than running away from those challenges, even if it's scary, I would encourage people to just do it. You don't get that time back. You can't, you could do an MA, like I say, but you don't get those years back, and they're what shape you and will make you your friends and allow you the time and the space to make decisions about your life and your future and work out who you are. So I would encourage people to still, even though it might sound like a leap and it might sound precarious. So lots of parents are worried, oh, what were you going to do? What if you're not an actor? Kind of like, well, you can pivot at any point in your life. You got that degree, you could do anything. I would just say a lot of parents now are encouraging their kids to do something they love. And that might be a reaction because they did a sensible thing. But I would still encourage everybody to do something they love. Otherwise, what's the point? There are so many avenues that you could take in your life. You could end up teaching. You could end up using that degree and then working in a theatre still. You might write, you might produce, you might anything on the back of it. But if you really love acting, you just have to go and try it, I think.
I think you're right. I love that. That's beautiful advice for the end of the episode. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. A huge thank you to you, Laura Graham May from Rag and Bone Arts, for such a thoughtful and insightful conversation. I think there's so much in there, both for the young performers and the parents and those that are beginning to take acting more seriously as well. There's things about understanding the process, building real skills, recognizing that not every journey into drama looks the same. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure you're following the Drama Coach podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And feel free to share it if you think somebody would benefit from this episode and find it helpful. As always, if you'd like to find out more about working with me, which brings me to the fact we haven't talked about where you can find Laura, so let's cut that in right here. Laura, if people want to find you and your work, where can they find you?
Go to our website, ragandbonearts.com, and you should be able to find everything on there as long as I've changed it and updated it.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Do you want anyone to follow you anywhere?
Yeah, we're on Facebook and Instagram, Rag and Bone Arts. Rag and Bone Arts CIC is our provision for adults in art and acting at the moment. And Rag and Bone Arts is our youth stuff. So that's how you can separate our social media. But everything's on the website.
So go to the website to find out more about Rag and Bone Arts. And if you want to explore my courses and coaching, all of the links are in the show notes, and you can find me across most socials at The Drama Coach. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all next time.